The impact came without warning. One moment, Marcus was mid-stride on his morning run through Prospect Park. The next, he was flat on his back with 120 pounds of golden retriever pinning him to the ground. His phone skittered across the concrete. His water bottle rolled into the grass. And before Marcus could process what the hell was happening, the dog was on top of him, massive paws pinning his shoulders, wet nose pressing frantically against his abdomen. "Get off me!" Marcus yelled, his voice sharp with anger and something else he wouldn't name. Fear, maybe. Or the uncomfortable awareness that other joggers were slowing down, phones emerging from pockets, probably already posting this to social media. Billionaire tech CEO attacked in park. His PR team would have a nightmare on their hands. Then he heard her voice, breathless and panicked. Duke, oh my God, I'm so sorry." A woman came sprinting toward them, her purple scrubs marking her as medical staff even from a distance. She was black, probably mid-30s, with her hair pulled back in a ponytail that had come half undone. Her eyes were wide with genuine horror as she grabbed the dog's collar and hauled backward with all her strength. The dog, Duke, wouldn't move. He stayed locked on Marcus's abdomen, his whole body trembling with the effort of whatever he was trying to communicate. "I'm so sorry, sir," the woman gasped, still pulling at the collar. Her voice shook. "He's never done this before. Never. I don't understand what. Duke, come." Marcus finally managed to scramble backward and get to his feet. His brand-new running pants were torn at the knee. His shirt was covered in muddy paw prints and dog drool. "Control your animal," Marcus snapped, his voice coming out harsher than he intended. Adrenaline still flooded his system, making his hands shake. "I could sue you for everything you own." The woman's face went pale. She'd finally managed to drag Duke back a few feet, but the dog was still lunging against the leash, still trying to reach Marcus with single-minded determination, still focused entirely on that spot below his ribs. "Please, I'm so sorry," she said, and Marcus could hear genuine terror in her voice now. Terror of lawsuits, probably, of losing whatever little she had. Her ID badge swung forward as she struggled with the dog, and Marcus caught the name. Amelia Johnson, RN, Brooklyn Home Healthcare. Duke was a medical detection dog before the shelter. Cancer detection, specifically. He's been retired for years. He's never acted out like this. "But sir, I think you should get yourself checked. Please." He wouldn't do this without reason. Marcus stared at her. Cancer detection? Was this woman seriously suggesting that her out-of-control rescue dog had diagnosed him with cancer in the middle of a public park? "Your dog is clearly unstable," Marcus said coldly, bending to retrieve his phone. The screen was cracked. Perfect. Just perfect. "I suggest you get him properly trained before he hurts someone." "I understand you're upset," Amelia said, and despite everything, her voice remained steady and professional. The voice of someone accustomed to dealing with difficult situations, with people at their worst. "But I'm a nurse. I've seen what medical detection dogs can do. If Duke is reacting this strongly to something, there's usually a reason. Please just get it checked out. That's all I'm asking." Marcus looked at her more carefully then. The exhaustion in her eyes suggested she was coming off a night shift. The worn sneakers and faded scrubs indicated someone who worked long hours for not enough pay. She was probably terrified he'd follow through on the lawsuit threat, probably running calculations in her head about legal fees she couldn't afford. Something about her genuine concern, misplaced as it was, softened his anger slightly. "I'm fine," Marcus said, though the ache in his abdomen seemed to sharpen even as he spoke the words. "Just keep him under control." He walked away without looking back, ignoring Amelia's continued apologies. But even as he exited the park and headed back toward his Tribeca penthouse, Marcus could feel the ghost of that dog's nose pressing into his side, could see those desperate, knowing eyes staring at him as if trying to communicate something desperately important. He pushed the thought away. He had a meeting with the Tokyo investors in 3 hours. He had a company to run, a merger to close, 1,000 fires to put out before the market opened. He didn't have time to think about strange dogs or exhausted nurses, or the ridiculous suggestion that a retired service animal had somehow detected cancer that didn't exist. Marcus Choi had built Choi Technologies from the ground up, turning a small software startup into a tech empire, worth billions. He'd done it through ruthless focus, through working 18-hour days, through never showing weakness or uncertainty. His parents, still living in Seoul, had raised him to understand that success required sacrifice. That showing emotion was showing weakness, that a Choi didn't complain, didn't falter, didn't fail. At 38, Marcus had everything he'd ever worked for. A penthouse worth $20 million, a company that employed thousands, influence that reached across continents. He sat on boards, advised presidents, made decisions that affected markets worldwide. What he didn't have was time to indulge in paranoid fantasies about cancer-detecting dogs. But that night, alone in his Tribeca penthouse, Marcus stood in front of the bathroom mirror and pressed his own fingers where Duke's nose had been. There was an ache there, an ache he hasn't felt before, or maybe he was just paying attention for the first time. A week passed, then 2. Discomfort in Marcus's abdomen grew from a dull ache to something sharper, more insistent. He popped ibuprofen like candy, told himself it was stress. The merger with Nakamoto Industries was approaching its final stages. Of course, his body was reacting to the pressure. That was normal. That was expected. During a particularly brutal negotiation session with Nakamoto's legal team, Marcus felt the pain spike so sharply he had to grip the edge of the conference table to keep from doubling over. His assistant Jennifer noticed immediately. "Mr. Choi, are you all right?" "Fine," Marcus bit out. "Continue with the intellectual property clauses." But Jennifer's concerned expression stayed with him, as did the memory of Amelia Johnson's voice. "Please, just get it checked out. That's all I'm asking." Marcus found himself thinking about that morning in the park more than he wanted to admit, about the way Duke had focused so intently on that exact spot, about the certainty in Amelia's eyes when she'd urged him to see a doctor. She'd said Duke was a cancer detection dog. Retired, yes, but trained. What if there was something to it? "This is ridiculous," Marcus said to his reflection. But Friday morning, instead of his usual run, he called his concierge doctor. "I need a scan, today." Dr. Shapiro, who'd been Marcus's physician for 5 years and knew better than to ask too many questions, got him into Mount Sinai by 2 p.m. The CT scan took 20 minutes. Marcus spent them staring at the ceiling of the machine, trying not to think about golden retrievers or dark-haired women in scrubs, or the way Duke had looked at him like he could see straight through skin and muscle to something wrong underneath. Dr. Shapiro called him at 6. "Marcus, I need you to come back in. Tomorrow morning. Can you do 8 a.m.? Something in his voice made Marcus's blood go cold. "Just tell me now." A pause. "I'd rather do this in person. I'd rather know now." Another pause. Longer. "The scan showed a mass on your pancreas. We need to do more tests to confirm. But given the size and location, Marcus, I'm very concerned this is pancreatic cancer." The penthouse suddenly felt enormous and empty. Marcus stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Hudson, phone pressed to his ear, watching boats move along the water far below. Tiny, insignificant. That's what people look like from up here. That's what he felt like now. How bad? His voice sounded strange, detached. "I'm going to refer you to Dr. Bennett, one of the best oncologists in the country. But Marcus, if this is what I think it is, pancreatic cancer is aggressive. The fact that you came in now, that we caught this now, that might have saved your life. If you'd waited another month, we wouldn't be having this conversation." Marcus ended the call. He stood at the window as the sun set, turning the Hudson to gold, then red, then gray. He thought about Duke. The dog had known. Somehow, impossibly, that animal had known. The biopsy confirmed it 3 days later. Stage 2 pancreatic cancer. Operable, Dr. Bennett said, but they needed to move fast. Chemo first to shrink it, then surgery. 6 months of treatment minimum, maybe longer. Marcus sat in Dr. Bennett's office, surrounded by diplomas and certifications and photos of the doctor's family, wife, 3 kids, everyone smiling, and felt the control he'd spent his entire life building crumble like sand. What are my odds? He needed numbers, data, something concrete. With treatment, 5-year survival rate is around 40%. Without treatment, you'd have maybe 6 months. Dr. Bennett studied him for a moment. In the meantime, I want you to start thinking about support systems. You're going to need help during treatment. Family, friends, hired care. I'll handle it, Marcus said, standing. His legs felt oddly unsteady, but he refused to let it show. Showing weakness was unacceptable, even now, especially now. He left the doctor's office and made it to his car before the shaking started. Sat in the driver's seat of his Tesla, hands gripping the steering wheel, and tried to process what had just happened. Cancer. He had cancer. The thing that killed people, that destroyed families, that turned strong bodies into hollow shells. Marcus pulled out his phone, scrolled through his contacts. His parents were in Seoul. Calling them would mean explaining, would mean showing vulnerability, would mean admitting he wasn't invincible. His assistant Jennifer was competent, but not someone he could lean on emotionally. His business associates were exactly that. Associates, not friends. The reality hit him then. He was alone. Completely, utterly alone. He'd built an empire, but forgotten to build a life. Had accumulated wealth and power and influence, but no one who actually cared about him as a person, rather than as an asset or a problem or an opportunity. His finger hovered over the recent calls list, and there it was. Brooklyn Home Healthcare. The number he'd saved after looking up Amelia's employer, thinking he might pursue a lawsuit. He'd never called it, had let his anger fade into the background noise of his busy life. Marcus did something he'd never done in his life. He called Brooklyn Home Healthcare and asked to speak to someone about hiring a private nurse. When they asked about his needs, Marcus explained, post-surgical care, chemotherapy support, long-term treatment assistance. And one more thing. I'd like to request Amelia Johnson specifically, Marcus said. If she's available. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Ms. Johnson is one of our best nurses, but she typically works with elderly patients in their homes. What you're describing would be full-time exclusive care. The cost would be... Money isn't an issue. I'll pay triple her normal rate, 6-month exclusive contract, and tell her she can bring her dog. Another pause, longer this time. Her dog, sir? Yes, Duke. Tell her that's non-negotiable. If the person on the other end thought this was strange, they were professional enough not to say so. They took Marcus's information, promised to reach out to Amelia, and said someone would call him back within 24 hours. Marcus drove home to his Tribeca penthouse, that glass and steel monument to his success that suddenly felt more like a mausoleum than a home. He stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows, looking out at the Manhattan skyline, and wondered what Amelia would say when she got the call. Would she remember the angry man from the park? Would she be suspicious of his motives? Would she even agree to take the job? He'd find out soon enough. If you're enjoying this story so far, please hit that like button and let me know in the comments below. The call came the next morning. Amelia Johnson had agreed to take the assignment, though the agency representative mentioned she'd had questions. When would she start? What exactly would the care entail? And was Mr. Choi certain about the dog? Marcus was certain about all of it. Amelia arrived at his penthouse at exactly 9 a.m. 3 days later, professional in clean purple scrubs, her expression carefully neutral. She carried a large bag of medical supplies over one shoulder, and beside her, looking up at Marcus with those same knowing eyes, was Duke. "Mr. Choi," Amelia said formally, extending her hand. Her grip was firm, her palm slightly calloused from years of nursing work. "I'm here for the care assignment." "Marcus," he corrected. "Please come in." She stepped inside, and Marcus saw her eyes widen slightly as she took in the space. The enormous windows with their million-dollar views, the minimalist furniture that cost more than most people's cars, the art on the walls, original pieces by Korean artists his mother had insisted he buy as investments. It was impressive, Marcus knew. It was meant to be impressive. But looking at it now through Amelia's eyes, he saw only the emptiness of it, the lack of warmth, of life, of anything that suggested an actual person lived here, rather than just stored their expensive possessions. Duke padded into the space, sniffing carefully, then walked directly to Marcus and sat down at his feet. No aggression, no frantic pressing, just a calm, watchful presence. Marcus crouched down slowly, his abdomen protesting the movement, and extended his hand. Duke leaned forward and licked it once, then rested his chin on Marcus's knee. "I wasn't sure about bringing him," Amelia said softly. "The agency said you requested it, but I thought maybe there was some confusion. After what happened in the park." "There's no confusion," Marcus said, still, looking at Duke. "He tried to tell me something that day. I didn't listen. I should have." He stood up and faced Amelia properly. "I have pancreatic cancer, stage 2. The tumor is exactly where Duke was pressing. Exactly. My doctor said if I'd waited another month or 2 before getting it checked, we'd be having a very different conversation right now." Amelia's professional mask cracked, and Marcus saw genuine emotion flood her face. Relief, vindication, concern. All of it passing through her expression in seconds before she composed herself again. "I'm so glad you got checked," she said quietly. "I'm glad the doctors caught it early." Marcus walked to his desk and pulled out an envelope he'd prepared. Inside was a check, $50,000, enough to change someone's life, enough to show genuine gratitude. "This is for you," he said, holding it out, "for what you and Duke did. I know you couldn't have known for certain, but you pushed me to get checked anyway. You saved my life, and I want to show my appreciation." Amelia stared at the envelope without taking it. For a long moment she said nothing. Then she looked up at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. "I can't accept that. It's not charity, it's gratitude. By telling you to see a doctor. That's what any nurse would do." Her voice was gentle but firm. "Marcus, I appreciate the thought. I really do. But a thank you is good enough. I didn't help you for a reward. I helped you because Duke was trying to tell you something important, and ignoring it could have killed you." Marcus still held out the envelope, uncertain. In his world, gratitude was measured in dollars. Appreciation was quantified. How else did you show someone their actions mattered? She stepped back, creating distance. "If you really want to thank me, then take your treatment seriously. Fight for your life. Get better. That's all the thanks I need." Marcus slowly lowered the envelope, feeling off balance in a way he couldn't quite name. He was offering her life-changing money, and she was refusing it. It didn't make sense. Everyone had a price. Everyone wanted something. He put the envelope back in the desk drawer, feeling the first stirrings of something uncomfortable. Respect, maybe. Or the recognition that he'd just tried to reduce a genuine act of human kindness to a financial transaction, and she'd called him on it. "All right," Marcus said quietly. "Then thank you for caring enough to push me, even when I was being an ass about it." Amelia nodded, accepting the apology without making a big deal of it. Professional to the core. "The agency explained what you're looking for. Post-surgical care, chemotherapy support, 6 months exclusive. Is the surgery scheduled?" "Next week, Tuesday. Dr. Bennett at Memorial." Bennett's excellent. You're in good hands." Amelia sat down, her medical bag, and pulled out a tablet. "I'll need detailed information about your treatment plan, current medications, any allergies or previous medical issues. We should set up your space for recovery. You'll need a hospital bed, IV stand, monitoring equipment. I'll coordinate with the medical supply company to get everything delivered before the surgery." She was all business now, efficient and competent, ticking through a mental checklist of everything that needed to happen. Marcus found it oddly comforting. For weeks now, he'd been spinning in place, trying to maintain control while his world fell apart. Having someone else take charge of the medical logistics felt like setting down a weight he hadn't realized he was carrying. "Okay, Marcus, let's talk about expectations. This is going to be hard. Harder than you probably think. The surgery will take a lot out of you, and the chemotherapy after that will be worse. You're going to be sick, weak, frustrated. You're going to have days where you want to give up. My job is to help you through all of that with as much dignity and comfort as possible. But I need you to be honest with me about pain levels, about symptoms, about how you're really doing. Can you do that?" Marcus thought about a lifetime of never showing weakness, of maintaining perfect control, of presenting an invincible facade to the world. Could he be honest? Could he be vulnerable? Did he even know how? "I can try," he said, and it was the most honest answer he could give. Amelia nodded. "Trying is enough. Now, let's get your medical history documented and start preparing this space. Do you have family who'll be here to help?" "My parents are in Seoul. I haven't told them yet." "Friends?" Marcus was quiet for a moment. "No, not really." He saw something flicker across Amelia's face. Pity, maybe, or understanding. She didn't comment on it, just made a note on her tablet and continued with her questions. Duke settled himself on the floor near Marcus's expensive designer couch, watching them both with those intelligent eyes. Every so often, the dog's gaze would focus on Marcus's abdomen, and Marcus could swear he saw concern in that canine expression. "I'll need a key to the apartment," Amelia said as she finished her initial assessment. "And I should mention, I have a daughter, Maya. She's 8. My usual childcare arrangement is reliable, but sometimes there are emergencies. If that happens, I may need to bring her with me. Is that going to be a problem?" Marcus thought about the sterile perfection of his penthouse, the lack of anything child-friendly or even child-safe. He thought about his carefully maintained schedule, his need for quiet and order and control. "It's fine," he heard himself say. "Bring her when you need to." Amelia looked surprised, as if she'd expected resistance. "Are you sure? 8-year-olds can be energetic." "I'm sure." The week before surgery passed in a blur of preparation. Medical equipment arrived and was installed in Marcus's master bedroom, transforming the minimalist space into something that looked more like a hospital room. Amelia came daily to check his vitals, to review the surgery plan, to make sure he understood what recovery would look like. Marcus tried to maintain his usual work schedule, but concentration proved difficult. His mind kept drifting to the surgery, to the tumor growing inside him, to the statistical likelihood that he wouldn't survive 5 years even with treatment. He'd spent his entire adult life building Choi technologies, sacrificing relationships and experiences, and anything resembling a normal life in service of that goal. And for what? So he could die at 38 with a fortune he'd never spent and a company that would replace him within a month. His mother called from Seoul 3 days before the surgery. Marcus had finally broken down and told his parents about the diagnosis, unable to put it off any longer. His mother had wanted to fly to New York immediately. His father had been characteristically stoic, asking practical questions about treatment plans and survival rates. "We should be there," his mother said in Korean, her voice tight with worry. "You shouldn't go through this alone." "I'm not alone," Marcus replied, which was technically true even if it felt like a lie. "I've hired excellent care, the best doctors. Everything's handled." "That's not what I mean, and you know it. You need family, Marcus, not hired help." But family meant showing them how weak he'd become, meant letting them see him sick and scared and vulnerable, meant admitting that their perfect son, the one who'd exceeded every expectation, who'd built an empire, who'd made the Choi name synonymous with success in the tech world, meant admitting that he was human after all. "I'll be fine, Iyama," Marcus said, using the Korean word for mother that he rarely spoke anymore. "I'll call you after the surgery." He ended the call before she could argue further, before his resolve could crack. The surgery was scheduled for 7 a.m. on a Tuesday. Dr. Bennett stopped by to review the procedure one final time. She'd remove the tumor and as much surrounding tissue as necessary to ensure clean margins. Depending on what they found once they opened him up, the surgery could take anywhere from 4 to 8 hours. The recovery would be painful. Complications were possible, but not likely. All of it sounded distant and unreal, like it was happening to someone else. Marcus nodded and signed consent forms and tried not to think about the statistical possibility that he wouldn't wake up. They wheeled Marcus toward the surgical suite, and he felt panic rising in his throat. This was it. The moment where he had to surrender control completely, had to trust his life to people he barely knew, had to face the very real possibility that he might not survive this. Amelia walked beside the gurney, her hand resting lightly on the rail. As they approached the doors to the surgical area, the point where she wouldn't be allowed to follow, she leaned down close to his ear. "You're going to be fine," she said quietly. "Duke and I will be here when you wake up. I promise." It was a promise she had no business making, no way of guaranteeing. But Marcus clung to it anyway as the anesthesia pulled him under. "The surgery went well," Dr. Bennett's voice said from somewhere above him. "We removed the tumor and surrounding tissue. Margins look clean. We'll know more once pathology comes back, but I'm optimistic." He was alive. He'd survived. "Amelia?" Marcus managed to croak out. "I'm here." Her voice closer now, warm and steady. "Right here, just like I promised." Marcus forced his eyes open. The recovery room swam into focus, bright lights, medical equipment beeping steadily, and Amelia's face hovering above him, her expression a mixture of relief and professional assessment. Marcus wanted to say something meaningful, wanted to express the gratitude and relief flooding through him. But the pain medication was pulling him back under, and all he managed was, "Thank you." "Rest," Amelia said softly. "That's your only job right now." The next few days existed in a blur of pain and medication and slow recovery. Marcus learned that even the simplest movements, sitting up, standing, walking to the bathroom, required enormous effort when your abdomen had been filleted open. He learned that pride and stubbornness meant nothing when you were too weak to make it 10 feet without assistance. He learned that accepting help was harder than any business negotiation he'd ever navigated. 2 weeks after surgery, when Marcus was finally strong enough to move around. Without assistance, Amelia brought Maya to the apartment for the first time. Marcus had been dreading this moment. Children made him uncomfortable in ways he couldn't articulate. They were unpredictable, loud, honest, in ways that felt dangerous. He'd built his entire life on control and carefully managed interactions. An 8-year-old represented chaos he didn't know how to handle. But when Amelia opened the door and Maya bounded in, backpack bouncing on her shoulders, Marcus found himself oddly curious rather than annoyed. Maya Johnson had her mother's green eyes and dark curls. But where Amelia was measured and calm, Maya was pure kinetic energy. "Whoa!" She stopped in the doorway, jaw dropping. "Are you rich? This place is huge. Do you live here alone? That's sad. Where's your family? Don't you have friends? Why is everything white? That seems boring. Is that real art or fancy prints? My teacher says rich people sometimes buy fancy prints and pretend they're real art." "Maya!" Amelia grabbed her daughter's hand. "Indoor voice, and we don't interrogate people." "You said to always ask questions when I'm curious about things." "I meant in school. You didn't specify." Marcus found himself suppressing a smile. "It's okay. Yes, I'm rich. Yes, I live alone. My family is in Korea. The art is real. And white isn't boring. It's minimalist." Maya considered this, then spotted the artwork on his wall, a traditional Korean landscape painting he'd inherited from his grandmother. "That's pretty. My friend Jenny is Korean. Do you speak Korean?" "I do." "Say something." He taught her how to say hello. She practiced it 17 times, each iteration getting louder until Amelia finally bribed her with an iPad and headphones. But before she settled onto his couch with her homework, Maya walked over to where he was sitting. "Mom said you're sick. My grandpa was sick too. He died." Direct, unflinching. "Are you going to die?" "Maya!" Amelia looked horrified, but Marcus appreciated the directness more than all the careful dancing around the subject everyone else did. "I don't plan to." "Good, because Mom seems to like you, even though she says you're just a client. And Duke really likes you, and he's an excellent judge of character. That's what Mom says." She skipped off before he could respond, leaving Marcus staring at Amelia, who'd gone very red. "She's 8, Amelia said. "No filter. It's refreshing." Amelia had set up her daughter at the dining table with homework, math worksheets, and a reading assignment. Marcus tried to focus on his laptop, reviewing documents his assistant had sent over, but he found his attention drifting to Maya's quiet mutterings as she worked through multiplication problems. After 20 minutes, she appeared beside his couch, worksheet in hand. "I don't understand this one," she said, pointing to a problem. "Can you help?" Marcus looked at Amelia, who was organizing his afternoon medications in the kitchen. She gave a small nod of permission, though he could see surprise in her expression. "Let me see," Marcus said, and Maya climbed onto the couch beside him, careful to avoid his injured side, and handed him the worksheet. The problem was basic algebra disguised as a word problem, and Marcus talked her through it step by step. Maya listened with fierce concentration, asking questions when something didn't make sense, lighting up when she finally understood the concept. "You're good at this," she said when they'd finished. "Are you a teacher?" "No, I run a technology company." "What's that mean?" "It means I build software, computer programs that help people do things." Maya processed this. "Do you like it?" It was such a simple question, but Marcus realized he didn't have a simple answer. Did he like running Choi Technologies? He'd built the company from nothing, had poured everything he had into making it successful. But like it? Enjoy it? He couldn't remember the last time work had brought him anything besides stress and the grim satisfaction of winning. "I'm good at it," Marcus said finally, which wasn't really an answer at all. Maya seemed to understand that. "Mom says sometimes we do things because we're good at them, not because they make us happy. She said she wanted to be a doctor but couldn't afford school, so she became a nurse instead. But she likes nursing. She says helping people makes her happy." Marcus glanced at Amelia, who was studiously focused on sorting pills into daily containers. Her cheeks had flushed slightly, as if embarrassed by her daughter's revelation. "Your mom's very good at what she does," Marcus said. "I know," Maya said matter-of-factly. "She's the best." Over the next 3 weeks, as Marcus regained his strength and prepared to start chemotherapy, Maya became a regular presence in the apartment. Her childcare arrangement was reliable, but Amelia's schedule was demanding, and sometimes bringing Maya along was simply easier than coordinating complex pickup arrangements. Marcus found, to his surprise, that he didn't mind. Maya would set up at the dining table with her homework, working through assignments with occasional requests for help. She talked constantly about school, about her friends, about a book she was reading, about everything and nothing. It should have been exhausting, but instead Marcus found it oddly soothing. Her chatter filled the silence of the apartment, made it feel less like an expensive tomb and more like a place where people actually lived. Duke, meanwhile, had appointed himself Marcus's shadow. The dog followed him from room to room, settling wherever Marcus settled. When Marcus worked from his home office, Duke sprawled, under the desk. When Marcus sat on the couch, Duke pressed against his legs. At night, Duke stationed himself outside Marcus's bedroom door. "He's never been this attached to anyone," Amelia said, watching the dog watch Marcus. "At the shelter, they said he was friendly but independent. With you, he's like Velcro. Maybe he's making sure I don't run away from treatment. Maybe he just knows you need him." The chemo started on a Thursday. Marcus had read all about FOLFIRINOX, the drug cocktail they were using. But reading about side effects and experiencing them were entirely different things. He made it through the infusion with gritted teeth and controlled breathing, made it home, made it to that evening. Then he spent 4 hours vomiting while Amelia held a cool cloth to his forehead and Duke whined anxiously from the bathroom doorway. "This is humiliating," Marcus gasped between bouts. "This is cancer treatment. There's no dignity in it, and that's okay." His hands started shaking, neuropathy, right on schedule, and suddenly he couldn't type, couldn't work, couldn't send the 100 emails that needed sending or review the documents that needed reviewing. "I need to." He reached for his laptop, but his fingers wouldn't cooperate. Amelia gently closed it. "Your job right now is healing, not building empires. You don't understand. The merger will happen or won't happen whether you type emails with shaking hands or not. Your board is full of smart people. Let them do their jobs so you can do yours. My job is running Choi Technologies. Right now, your job is not dying." She said it calmly, but the words hit like a sledgehammer. Everything else is secondary. The taste changes came next, everything metallic. Nothing appealed to him. His chef prepared elaborate meals that Marcus couldn't stomach. Amelia experimented with different foods, trying to find something his altered taste buds could tolerate. She made bland broths, tried different proteins, adjusted seasonings. Nothing worked until she brought in a container of miok guk, Korean seaweed soup. "My elderly patient Mrs. Kim taught me to make this," Amelia said, ladling the soup into a bowl. "She said it's what Korean mothers make for healing. I thought maybe—" Marcus took a cautious sip, expecting the same metallic wrongness that had plagued everything else. But the soup tasted not good exactly, but tolerable, almost normal. He could actually eat it without fighting nausea. "This works," he said, surprised. Amelia smiled, clearly pleased. "Mrs. Kim will be happy to hear it. I'll make more." She did, bringing fresh containers several times a week. It became the only thing Marcus could reliably keep down, and he found himself looking forward to it not just for the sustenance, but for what it represented. Amelia paying attention, learning something. Specifically for him, caring about more than just clinical symptoms. Maya was with them that evening, drawing at the kitchen island while Duke snoozed at her feet. She looked up, watching Marcus eat. "Does it hurt?" she asked. "The treatment?" "Sometimes." "My grandpa said the worst part wasn't the pain. It was feeling like he didn't matter anymore, like he was just sick and that was all anyone saw." Marcus set down his spoon. This child, with her unfiltered observations, kept hitting truths he spent decades avoiding. "Do you think that?" he asked Amelia. "That I'm just the sick guy?" She considered the question seriously. "I think you're a man who's fighting for his life and learning that he can't control everything. I think you're someone who's never let anyone see him struggle before, and you're discovering that vulnerability isn't weakness. I think you're—" She paused. "I think you're more than your diagnosis. Yes." That night, Maya left him one of her drawings. Duke wearing a superhero cape, lightning bolts shooting from his paws. At the bottom, in careful third-grade handwriting, "Duke saves the day." Marcus put it on his refrigerator. His first decoration in 3 years of living in this penthouse. The chemo got worse before it got better. Week 3 brought crushing fatigue that had him falling asleep mid-sentence. He dozed off during a video call with investors, jerking awake to find Amelia had turned off his laptop and covered him with a blanket. "How long was I out?" 20 minutes. I told them you'd call back. They're going to think I'm incompetent. They're going to think you're human. But Marcus couldn't shake the fear. If he showed weakness, if he wasn't the invincible CEO, what happened to everything he'd built? His board was already nervous about the merger. If they sensed any instability, he tried to compensate. Tried to prove he was still in control, still the same Marcus Choi who'd built an empire through sheer force of will. He sent Amelia home early one evening, insisted he was fine, didn't need help, and immediately regretted it. The nausea hit hard, and he couldn't reach his anti-nausea medication. Ended up on the bathroom floor at 2 a.m., too weak to stand, phone dead in the other room. Duke found him there. The dog nosed open the bathroom door. Marcus had left it ajar and pressed against his side, whining. "Good boy," Marcus whispered. "I'm okay, just stupid." Duke didn't leave, just stayed there warm and solid until Marcus finally managed to drag himself up and back to bed. When Amelia arrived the next morning and saw the state of him, she didn't say "I told you so." She just helped him shower, got him into clean clothes, and made him promise to stop trying to do everything alone. "You're not weak for needing help," she said. "You're weak for pretending. You don't." The words rattled around in Marcus's head for days. Maya came by after school later that week, chattering about her day while Amelia checked Marcus's vitals. She was describing a talent show her school was having. She'd signed up to play piano when she stopped mid-sentence. "You should come," she said brightly. "It's in 2 months. You'll be done with treatment by then, right?" Marcus had no idea what his condition would be in 2 months. Maybe. "You can sit with Mom. She always comes alone because Aunt Rachel has to work and Grandma's in Florida. It would be nice if she had someone." Amelia's hand stilled on the blood pressure cuff. "Maya, Mr. Choi is very busy. We can't just—" "I'll try," Marcus heard himself say. "No promises." Maya beamed. Amelia looked at him with something he couldn't quite read. Surprise? Pleasure? Hope? That night, alone in his penthouse, Marcus thought about dying. Really thought about it for the first time since the diagnosis. If he died tomorrow, who would come to his funeral? His parents, obviously. His board of directors, out of obligation. Business acquaintances. Maybe Jennifer, his assistant. Maybe some of the engineers he'd worked with over the years. But would anyone actually miss him? Not Marcus Choi, CEO, but him. The person underneath the titles and the money and the carefully constructed image. The answer was devastatingly clear. Probably not. He'd built an empire, but no relationships. Accumulated wealth, but no one to share it with. Proven his strength by never letting anyone close enough to see his weakness. And now he was fighting for a life that, if he was honest, felt hollow. His phone buzzed. A message from Maya, sent from Amelia's phone. A video of Duke doing a trick, with the caption, "Duke says goodnight." Marcus watched it 3 times. Sent back a thumbs-up emoji, then deleted it and wrote, "Tell Duke I said goodnight, too." A minute later, he wagged his tail. "Mom says that's dog for I love you." Marcus stared at that message for a long time. If you're enjoying this story so far, please hit that like button and subscribe for more stories like this one. Week 8 was the worst. The accumulated effects of the chemo hit him like a wall. He couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, couldn't function. Everything hurt. The neuropathy in his hands had spread to his feet. He'd lost 18 pounds. His hair had started falling out in clumps. And through it all, Amelia was there, patient, calm, never pitying, never coddling, but present in a way that made the unbearable slightly more bearable. Maya came less often during this period. Amelia said she didn't want her daughter to see him this sick, but she sent drawings, videos of Duke, little notes that said things like, "You can do it and cancer is dumb." On the worst night, Marcus broke. Just completely broke. The pain was too much. The nausea too constant, the exhaustion too deep. He couldn't do this anymore, couldn't keep fighting, couldn't see the point. "I want to stop." he told Amelia at 3 a.m., delirious with fever. "I just want it to end." She was checking his temperature, monitoring him carefully. The fever was high, but not dangerous yet. "You're in the worst of it. It gets better." "What if it doesn't? What if I do all this and die anyway? Why am I fighting so hard for a life I'm not even sure I want?" Amelia sat on the edge of his bed. "Because you're worth fighting for. Because there are people who need you here." "No one needs me. I'm just a bank account and a signature." "Maya needs you. She asks about you every day. She's practicing her piano piece twice as hard because she wants you to be proud of her." The words hit him in his feverish state. Maya, that bright, fierce little human who saw him, really saw him, and decided he was worth her time anyway. "I don't know how to be what she needs." "You already are. You show up. You listen. You're honest with her. That's what kids need." Marcus closed his eyes. The room spun. "I'm so tired." "I know." He must have dozed off because when he woke, Duke was on the bed. The dog had never been allowed on furniture, Amelia's rule, but there he was, pressed against Marcus's chest, heartbeat to heartbeat, those amber eyes watching him with that same certainty from the park. Duke wasn't leaving. Whatever he'd sensed that day, he was here to see through to the end. Marcus's hand found Duke's fur, the dog's steady breathing, the warmth, the absolute lack of judgment. This animal had seen him at his worst and hadn't flinched. "Thanks, buddy," Marcus whispered. Duke's tail thumped once against the comforter. When Amelia checked on him an hour later, she found them like that, man and dog, both finally still. She didn't say anything about Duke being on the bed, just adjusted Marcus's blankets and left them alone. Something shifted that night. Marcus couldn't name it, but he felt it, like a door opening in a house he'd kept locked for years. The next morning, the fever broke. Marcus woke clear-headed for the first time in days to find Amelia asleep in the chair beside his bed, Duke back on the floor but pressed against her legs. They'd stayed, both of them, all night. Marcus watched her sleep, the gentle rise and fall of her breathing, the way her hand rested on Duke's head even in sleep, and felt something dangerous bloom in his chest. He was falling for her. The realization terrified him more than the cancer had. You couldn't buy love, couldn't control it, couldn't predict or manage or optimize it. It was the ultimate variable, and Marcus had spent his life eliminating variables. But there it was, in the way his heart lifted when he heard her key in the door, in how he timed his day around her visits, in the fact that he'd started caring about getting better, not just to survive, but because he wanted more time with her, with them, Amelia and Maya and Duke, this makeshift family that had somehow assembled itself around his sickbed. Amelia stirred, blinking awake. When she saw him watching her, something flickered across her face. Then she was all business again, standing, checking his forehead. "Fever's gone. How do you feel?" "Better." "Good." She wouldn't quite meet his eyes. "I should get your breakfast started." She was at the door when Marcus spoke. "Amelia." She turned. "Thank you for staying." "It's my job." "No, it's not. Your job ends at 8 p.m. It was 2 a.m. A pause. "You needed someone." "I needed you." The words hung between them. Amelia's expression shifted. Surprise, something that might have been pleasure, then careful neutrality. "I'll get your breakfast," she said, and left. Marcus lay back, Duke's eyes on him. The dog's expression seemed knowing, judging, almost. "I know," Marcus told him. "It's complicated." Duke huffed and put his head back down, unconvinced. The chemo continued. 16 weeks total. Marcus tracked every symptom, every blood count, every microscopic change. He couldn't control the cancer, but he could control the data about the cancer. Amelia had learned to work around his need for control. She gave him his charts, his numbers, his schedules, let him build his spreadsheets and projections. didn't point out that all the data in the world couldn't tell him if he'd live or die. Maya's presence became regular. 3 afternoons a week, she'd come home with Amelia, spread her homework across Marcus's kitchen island, and work while asking him impossible questions. Why was math so hard? Because humans weren't naturally good at abstract thinking. Why did people get cancer? Because cells sometimes make mistakes, and sometimes those mistakes multiply. Why didn't he have a girlfriend? That one, Marcus didn't have a good answer for. I work a lot, he finally said. That's a dumb reason. Everyone works. My mom works like 1,000,000 hours and she still has time for me. It's different. How? I run a company. I have thousands of employees depending on me. Maya considered this, then shrugged. Sounds lonely. That's not what this is. The weeks blurred together. Treatment, recovery, brief periods of relative normalcy. Marcus's hair fell out in clumps, a loss he'd been prepared for but still felt devastating when it actually happened. He stared at himself in the mirror one morning, seeing a stranger looking back, bald, gaunt, with dark circles under his eyes and skin that had taken on an unhealthy pallor. He looked like what he was, a cancer patient. The illness had stripped away every pretense, every carefully maintained facade. There was no hiding this, no controlling how people perceived him. Amelia found him like that, standing frozen in front of the bathroom mirror. I look like I'm dying, Marcus said flatly. You look like you're fighting, Amelia corrected. She came to stand beside him, meeting his eyes in the mirror. I had a cancer scare a few years ago. Benign tumor. But those weeks of not knowing, I've seen what this kind of fear does to people. You're still here, Marcus, still standing. That's what matters. I barely recognize myself. Good. Maybe that means you're becoming someone new. It was such a strange thing to say that Marcus turned to look at her directly. What do you mean? Amelia was quiet for a moment, choosing her words carefully. The man I met in the park that day, angry, threatening lawsuits, treating people like problems to be managed. He was so closed off, I don't think he could see how lonely he was. But you help Maya with her homework. You let Duke sleep on your bed. You're learning to accept help without seeing it as weakness. That's not the same person. I'm still me, Marcus protested. Are you? Or are you someone who's finally letting people see who you really are under all the armor? Marcus had no answer to that, but her words stayed with him, circling in his mind during the sleepless nights and difficult days. Was he changing or just revealing what had always been there beneath the carefully constructed CEO persona? By week 16 of treatment, Marcus's scans showed the cancer remained in remission. Dr. Bennett was cautiously optimistic. The surgery had been successful. The chemotherapy was doing its job. All signs pointed toward long-term survival. Marcus should have been celebrating, should have felt relief and joy and triumph. Instead, he felt panic clawing at his throat. The treatment protocol called for 24 weeks total, 6 months. He was 2/3 of the way through, which meant Amelia's contract was approaching its end. Soon she'd be gone, back to her regular rotation of elderly patients. Maya would stop coming around, Duke would go back to his normal life, and Marcus would be alone again in his sterile penthouse, cured of cancer but somehow emptier than before. He couldn't let that happen, couldn't lose this thing he'd built with them, fragile and strange as it was. When Amelia came to check his vitals that evening, Marcus made his decision. I want to extend your contract, he said. After the treatment ends, long-term care, name your price. Amelia's hands stilled on the blood pressure cuff. Marcus, you won't need long-term care. You're getting better. That's the goal. I know, but I want you to stay anyway. How much would it take? Double your current rate? Triple? She pulled the cuff off his arm slowly, her expression unreadable. You're asking me how much it would cost to keep me showing up. I'm asking what it would take to extend our arrangement. You're an excellent nurse. Maya's happy here. It makes sense to... Stop. Amelia's voice cut through his rationalization like a knife. Just stop. Marcus fell silent, something in her tone making his chest tighten. People aren't bought like that, Marcus. Her voice shook with barely controlled anger. You can't just throw money at human relationships and expect them to stay packaged the way you want them. I'm not a service you subscribe to. Maya isn't entertainment you can rent. This isn't how life works. I didn't mean it like that. You're so terrified of being vulnerable, of actually showing what you feel, that you hide behind your bank account. Every time something gets real, every time emotions come into play, you pull out your wallet. Because money you understand, money you can control. But feelings, connection, those scare you more than the cancer ever did. Marcus felt the words land like physical blows. That's not fair, isn't it? Think about it, Marcus. When have you ever let yourself need someone without trying to pay for the privilege? When have you ever opened up emotionally without putting a transaction around it to keep it safe? She gathered her medical supplies with sharp, angry movements. My contract ends in 8 weeks. I'll fulfill it professionally. But after that, I'm done. Because I can't watch you reduce everything meaningful to a line item on a balance sheet. Amelia left the room, and Marcus sat in the crushing silence, her words echoing in his mind. The panic in his chest intensified, but now it was mixed with something else. Shame, recognition, the uncomfortable awareness that she was absolutely right. He'd been trying to buy what couldn't be purchased, and in doing so, he'd revealed exactly how little he'd actually changed. Marcus was so caught up in this rationalization that he almost missed the other thing demanding his attention. Choi Technologies was in crisis. His assistant Jennifer had been handling day-to-day operations during his treatment, but the Nakamoto merger had hit unexpected complications. The Japanese company's financial situation was worse than initial audits suggested. To make the deal work, to protect Choi Technologies' investment and ensure the merger delivered the promised synergies, massive restructuring would be required. The board had called an emergency meeting. Marcus attended via video call from his apartment, still too weak for in-person attendance. 15 faces filled his screen, all wearing expressions ranging from concerned to openly hostile. The numbers don't lie, the CFO said, pulling up spreadsheets that made Marcus's head ache just looking at them. Nakamoto is bleeding money in 3 departments. To make this merger work, we need to cut costs immediately. That means workforce reduction. How many people? Marcus asked. 30% across both companies. We're looking at roughly 2,000 positions eliminated. 2,000 people, 2,000 families losing their income, 2,000 lives disrupted so that Marcus's merger could succeed, so that his legacy could remain intact. The old Marcus, the one from before the cancer, before Duke, before Amelia, wouldn't have hesitated. Business was business. You made the hard choices because that's what leaders did. Sentiment was expensive, and expensive mistakes killed companies. But this... Marcus hesitated. Thought about Amelia working 2 jobs to support Maya. Thought about how precarious financial security could be, how quickly everything could fall apart. There has to be another way, Marcus said. There isn't. The CFO's voice was flat, certain. We restructure now or the whole deal collapses. You lose the merger, you lose billions in valuation. You lose any chance of competing with the Chinese market expansion. This is the only path forward. Marcus looked at the faces on his screen, looked at the spreadsheets and projections and cold, hard numbers that reduced human lives to line items on a balance sheet. He thought about mortality, about legacy, about what he'd be leaving behind if the cancer came back, if the remission didn't hold. Do it, Marcus heard himself say. Approve the restructuring. I'll sign off on the paperwork tonight. The relief on the board members' faces should have felt validating. Instead, Marcus just felt hollow. After the call ended, Marcus sat in the silence of his apartment and tried to convince himself he'd made the right choice. This was business. This was survival. This was protecting the company he'd spent his life building, but the rationalization felt thin, weak, like something the old Marcus would have believed without question, but this new version couldn't quite swallow. He didn't tell Amelia about the decision, didn't mention the layoffs or the restructuring or the 2,000 people whose lives he'd just upended. She was his nurse, not his confidant. This wasn't her concern, except 3 days later, Maya mentioned it. The girl was working on homework at the dining table, Marcus helping her with a particularly tricky math problem, when she looked up with troubled eyes. "My friend Sarah's dad lost his job," Maya said. "She was really sad at school today. He worked for some technology company that's firing lots of people." Marcus's stomach dropped. "What company?" "I don't know. But Sarah said it was really big, and her dad said the owner didn't care about regular people, just about money." Maya paused, then added with the brutal honesty of children, "That made me think of you. You have lots of money. Do you care about regular people?" Before Marcus could formulate an answer, Amelia emerged from the kitchen. Her expression told him she'd heard every word. "Maya, why don't you take Duke for a walk around the hallway?" Amelia said, her voice carefully controlled. "He could use some exercise." Maya, sensing adult tension, gathered up the dog without argument. The moment the apartment door closed behind them, Amelia turned to Marcus. What company was Maya talking about? Marcus could have lied, could have deflected. Instead, he found himself telling the truth. Choi Technologies were merging with Nakamoto Industries. The restructuring required workforce reduction. It's standard practice for this type of... How many people? 2,000 across both companies. Amelia stared at him for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was quiet but sharp as broken glass. 2,000 families, right before the holidays. Did you even think about them? It's business. The merger required... I don't care what it required. Her voice rose now. 3 weeks ago, you tried to buy me, tried to turn our relationship into something you could control with money. I told you then, people aren't transactions, and now you've just proven you learned nothing. 2,000 people aren't numbers on a spreadsheet, Marcus. They're humans with families and mortgages, and children like Maya who depend on them. You don't understand the pressure. I understand that you had a choice. You always have a choice, and you chose power and profit over people. Again. She stepped back, and Marcus could see the decision forming on her face. I tried to tell you weeks ago when you asked me to name my price. I tried to warn you that this is who you are, someone who believes everything can be solved with money and power, someone who's too afraid to actually feel anything real. Amelia, please. I'm done, Marcus. Not just with the contract. With all of this. I thought you were changing. I thought the cancer had stripped away enough of your armor that you were finally becoming someone real. Someone who understood that being alive means living with integrity and compassion. Her voice broke. I was wrong. Don't go. I'll change. You'll what? Offer me more money. That's your answer for everything, isn't it? Marcus opened his mouth, then closed it. Because she was right. Even now, his first instinct had been to negotiate, to offer something, to buy his way out of this. Amelia called for Maya and Duke. As they left, the little girl looked back with confused, hurt eyes. Duke whined, pulling against the leash one more time. Then they were gone. Marcus stood in the doorway of his empty apartment, listening to the silence close in around him. The space that had felt too small with Amelia and Maya and Duke filling it now felt cavernous, empty, like the mausoleum it had always been. He closed the door and leaned against it, sliding down until he sat on the expensive hardwood floor. For the first time since his diagnosis, Marcus let himself truly break down, not crying about the cancer or the pain or the fear of death. Crying because he'd finally found something real, something worth fighting for, and he'd destroyed it with the same cold calculation he'd used to build his empire. His phone buzzed with a notification. The layoff announcement had gone public. Social media was already exploding with reactions. Employees posting about job losses, industry analysts debating the merger strategy, activists calling for boycotts. Marcus turned off his phone and sat in the silence. 2 weeks passed in a gray blur. The agency assigned him a new nurse, competent, professional, utterly anonymous. Marcus completed his chemotherapy treatments without complications. His scans continued to show remission. By all objective measures, he was beating the cancer, but he felt more dead than he had lying on the surgical table. His parents flew in from Seoul without asking permission, his mother taking one look at him and immediately starting to cook traditional Korean dishes meant for healing. His father said little, but Marcus caught him watching with concerned eyes. On the third day of their visit, over breakfast, his mother finally spoke what she'd clearly been thinking. "You're alive, but you're not living. What are you so afraid of?" Marcus looked up from the miyeokguk his mother had made, the same soup Amelia used to bring him, and felt something break open in his chest. "I'm afraid of being weak," he said quietly, "of not mattering, of dying and leaving nothing behind." His mother reached across the table and took his hand. "You matter to the people who see you. Do they see you, Marcus, or just your money?" The answer was obvious, painful, true. That afternoon, Marcus called an emergency board meeting. Via video call, he faced the same, 15 people who'd pushed for the layoffs. "I'm reversing the restructuring decision," he announced. "We're keeping all 2,000 employees." The room exploded. "You'll tank the merger. This is financial suicide. You're throwing away billions." "Then I'm throwing it away," Marcus said calmly. "Restructure the deal another way. Take it out of executive compensation. Reduce my salary to $1 if you have to. But we're not destroying lives to pad profit margins." "The board will vote you out," the CFO warned. "Then they do. But I'm not doing this anymore. I'm not building monuments to fear." He ended the call before they could argue further. The talent show was that evening. Marcus had found the invitation Maya had given him months ago, crumpled in a drawer. Jefferson Elementary School, 6 p.m. She probably assumed he wouldn't come. Why would he? He was just her mom's former patient. Except he wasn't. He was someone who'd been seen by an 8-year-old and deemed worthy of her time. Someone who'd been given a second chance by a dog who could smell death and chose to stick around anyway. Marcus showed up with flowers, daisies, because Maya had once mentioned liking them. The auditorium was packed with families, kids fidgeting in their seats, teachers managing chaos. He found a seat in the back, scanned the program. Maya was third. The lights dimmed. The show started. Marcus's hands were shaking, not from neuropathy this time, but from nerves. He was about to see her, about to see Amelia, and he had no idea what he'd say. When her turn came, Maya walked onto the stage in a blue dress, her hair in careful braids. She looked nervous, then she looked up, scanning the audience. Looking for her mother, probably. She found Marcus instead, her whole face transformed, lit up like someone had turned on a light inside her. She grinned, waved, then turned to the piano with new confidence. She played beautifully, a simple piece but performed with the fierce concentration Marcus had seen when she worked through math problems at his dining table. When she finished, the applause was generous, but Maya's eyes found Marcus immediately. After the show, she ran to him. "You came. Mom said you probably wouldn't." Marcus crouched down to her level. "I'm sorry I made you think that. You mattered more than anything else today." Amelia appeared then, her expression guarded but no longer angry, just tired, sad. "Can we talk?" Marcus asked. They stepped outside while Maya collected congratulations from friends. The evening air was cool, early autumn settling over the city. "I reversed the layoffs," Marcus said. "The board might vote me out." Amelia's eyes widened. "Marcus, I didn't do it for redemption, or to win you back. I did it because you were right. I was so afraid of dying without leaving a legacy that I forgot how to live with integrity." He took a breath. I don't have a grand gesture, because I know you don't care about any of that, but I'm here as me, and I'm asking if that's enough. His voice cracked. I don't know how to do this without money solving it, but I want to learn, if you'll teach me. Amelia was crying now, tears sliding down her cheeks. I'm not your nurse anymore, Marcus. I know. And I can't fix you. I know that too. So what are you asking? Marcus took her hand. I'm asking if you'd be willing to see where this goes. As equals. No contract, no payment, just us. You, me, Maya, and Duke. Amelia looked at their joined hands, then back at his face. You really mean it? I've never meant anything more in my life. She smiled through her tears. Then yes. Let's see where this goes. 6 months later, Marcus sat in Dr. Bennett's office for his 1-year scan results. Remission is holding. Strong, she said. You're doing great. Outside, Amelia waited with Maya and Duke. When Marcus emerged with good news, Maya cheered. Duke's tail wagged, and Amelia kissed him right there in the hospital corridor, not caring who saw. They walked through Prospect Park, the same park where everything had started. Duke ran ahead, healthy and happy. Maya rode on Marcus's shoulders, laughing as he taught her Korean words. Amelia's hand fit perfectly in his. Marcus had spent his life building empires. But here, with a woman who challenged him, a child who saw him, and a dog who'd saved him, he'd finally built something that mattered. He'd built a home. Duke barked and circled back to them, his knowing eyes meeting Marcus's. The dog had seen the sickness before anyone else, had stayed through the worst nights, had refused to give up. Marcus crouched down, scratching Duke's ears. Thank you, buddy, for everything. Duke licked his hand once, then bounded. Ahead again, leading them forward into whatever came next. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe and share it with someone who needs to hear this message today. Let me know in the comments what you thought of Marcus's transformation.